Hey, what's up everyone? It's Bigfoot. I'm here today to talk to you about safety. I'm going to give you 10 tips to help you prevail on the trail. All right, safety tip number 1. Be a prepper. Now, I'm not talking about doomsday prepping here, guys. I'm talking about thru-hike prepping. First of all, you need to know what you're getting into. I've done some videos on this, and I've talked about this in probably maybe 4 or 5 videos. And there's a reason why I keep on going back to it. It's really important, not just for you to prevail on the trail, but it's important for your safety that you know what you're getting into. Now, there are so many resources out there today that we thru-hikers and aspiring thru-hikers have, and a lot of these resources are from people that have already thru-hiked the trail. What better way of getting knowledge through others' experience? You can learn from their mistakes, learn from how they prepared, and then take what you want and use it for your own. But it's really important to get to know exactly what you're getting into and be prepared. Now, I've said this on another video, and I want to say it again. Being mentally prepared is so much more important than being physically prepared. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some things that, definitely will benefit you if you are more physically prepared. But through hiking 2,200 miles through the Appalachian Mountains, you need to be mentally fit to be able to handle that journey. A lot of people can't handle that. So this is another thing that will help you when you know what to expect and you're prepared for that. It's going to help out the mental side of things. Now on the physical side, I do highly recommend to try and get as many pre-hikes as you can in there. Get a chance, get your gear in your pack, throw the pack on your back, and find the steepest hill or whatever is near you. Maybe it's just 20 flights of stairs up an office building. But get out there and get a feel for what it's going to be like, what it's going to feel like with your 20, 25, whatever weight that your pack is. So get out there, and that is one of the best things you do from a physicality standpoint. Obviously, again, getting in shape is great, but you need to know what to expect and how it's going to feel. Now, the 2 videos that I recommend that I've done that will help in this area, number 1 is planning and preparing for your thru-hike, and the other is my 10 things to expect when you're starting your thru-hike on the Appalachian Trail. I'll throw the links in the details below. Tip number 2, lighten up, people. I can't talk about this enough, and I know I'm probably preaching to the choir, but you are going to get out there on the Appalachian Trail. You're going to see hikers with 50-pound packs. I'm not kidding you. This is really important, but it's not just important for you to be able to be comfortable and have a comfortable base weight so that you can prevent injuries from happening and everything else that comes with that, but it's really important that you are balancing out safety with your comfort. You can't skimp out on things that are going to put your safety at risk. Example of this that I've used before is folks sending home their down jacket because it's too hot out and they don't think they're ever going to use it. It's just too important, so make sure that you're prepared for the conditions that you may see on the trail, not the conditions that you think you may see. My recommendation for base weight is below 20 pounds. I truly feel you can do this and accomplish this without costing a ton of money. If you haven't already checked out my Affordable Gear Challenge, check it out. And in that video, I really talk about and show you how it's done. But you can do this not just for cheap. You can do this without having to sacrifice a lot of the comforts maybe that you do want. To sum it all up, you will increase your chances of finishing your hike the lighter that your pack's going to be without sacrificing safety. All right, tip number 3, bring sticks. I'm talking about trekking poles here, which are also known as sticks for some hikers. Heck, they actually might be sticks for some hikers. But about 95% of the hikers that I met on the trail were using some form and fashion of a trekking pole or a walking stick. Now, there are some disadvantages of this, but there are so many advantages, and I honestly believe that the advantages severely outweigh the disadvantages. Now, I thought and firmly believe that my trekking poles were my number 1 injury preventer on the trail. Now, I had a different technique for using my trekking poles than I saw most hikers on the trail. I'm going to do another video about that later on, but I will tell you, I really used my trekking poles for 4 reasons. Number 1, I use them to balance out my energy from my legs to my torso, to my shoulders, to my arms when I was ascending mountains. I honestly felt at times that I had 4 legs. I was able to ascend mountains so much faster than when I had no trekking poles or no walking sticks. Number two, trekking poles were so helpful when I descended. Now with the technique that I used, this helped balance out all of my body weight that would normally be putting pressure on my knees and my ankles, all on my poles. And this is where the technique that I personally used really differed from most hikers that I saw, but this really helped preventing injury when I was descending. Most of the folks that actually get hurt on the trail happens when they're descending on mountains, especially when they're descending steep mountains. And with all of your pack weight and body weight all on your knees and ankles, this is super important. So using and balancing that out with my poles was extraordinary. The third thing I used trekking poles for was stability. This helped me so often on the trail. I bet you I probably prevented rolling my ankle maybe 25 or 30 times. It was often, once every few days I would say at least. And these really provided stability for me to catch myself so I wouldn't fall and roll my ankle. And the last thing was trekking poles have really become popular in the ultralight and lightweight backpacking worlds, where most tents are actually using trekking poles as their tent poles now. My duplex tent that I had needed my trekking poles for the tent poles. Now, I can't tell you how important trekking poles were for me and most Thru-Hikers I met. And I will tell you that there were quite a few people that made it all the way to Katahdin with no poles at all. And you know, it can be done, but I'll tell you, I feel your chances increase if you use trekking poles. All right, my safety tip number 4 is SOS with a GPS. Yeah, that's right. I truly believe that you should have a GPS with you on the trail. You never know what kind of situations and scenarios you might be in. You can't always assume that you're going to be hiking with your group. You'll probably be alone sometimes, if not like me, most of the time. And I just think it's really important. There are also lots of other functionalities that a lot of these modern day GPSs do have. For me, I love the feature of being able to text people when I didn't have a cell phone signal. So I was able to still stay in contact with my family and friends and loved ones. In addition to that, there's also some other cool features, like I unlocked the ability for people to be able to track me and see where I'm at. Now, in addition to the GPS, I think it's really important that you have some sort of paper map with you. Now, what I recommend is bringing a paper version of AWOL's guide in addition to having the PDF version of AWOL's guide on your phone. I think it's super important that you do have at least a section at a time of AWOL's guide with you. So if your phone does die, or it gets lost, or it breaks, whatever, you still have an ability to be able to navigate around. Now, navigating on the Appalachian Trail is pretty easy, but it's really important to be able to plan and know like where all the towns are and where you need to go. And if you don't have a paper map and something does happen to your electronic device, you're going to really rely on other hikers out there, and you just don't want to do that. So it's really important to have a paper map with your GPS. Now, the other thing that I recommend is using Guthook's app. I use Guthook's AT Hiker to really navigate on the trail. I use that to navigate on the trail, and then I used AWOL's guide really for more of the planning purposes and for the town visits. But the combination of those two was a home run. Actually, it was a grand slam for me. So that's what I recommend. Now, you can thru-hike the entire Appalachian Trail without a GPS, without any paper maps. But again, your chances are going to increase if you leverage the resources out there. And for me, it's making sure that I had a GPS and a paper map. All right, and lastly, if you haven't had a chance already, I did do 3 videos about how to navigate and orienteer the Appalachian Trail. One is really on the Blazes, another is on AWOL's guide, and the last one is on Guthook's app. Now, I actually do a tutorial on both AWOL's guide and Guthook's app, and I just think they're really great resources, but check those out. I'll put them again in the details below. All right, safety tip number 5 is avoid fleeing your well-being. Well, what I mean by that is take care of yourself. Take precautions out there to make sure that you aren't putting your health at risk. Now, some of these things are really common sense, but I'll tell you, I saw on the trail a lot of them just not being followed. The first for me is make sure that you treat or filter your water. I know there are some people out there that don't do this, but I think it's just really important. There are people out there that contract Giardia, and if you get this, you are going to be down for at least a week, if not maybe a few weeks. You don't want Giardia. I've never had it myself. I've heard horror stories of it, but trust me, it is worth taking the time and filtering and treating your water. Don't put yourself in that position, because that might take you off the trail. The next thing is every time that you have opportunities to shower, highly encourage you to do so. I know that sounds like it's really common sense, but I'll tell you, I met a lot of hikers out there that didn't take showers for like a couple weeks. Now, this is important for so many different reasons, but you know, you're going days and days without really showering yourself, and you know, you're full of all kinds of bacteria and dirt and grime and all these things. But you know what? I met a hiker out in Hot Springs when I was at one of the pubs down there, and he shared with me his story that he got somewhere, I think about 400 miles into his through hike, and he neglected his hygiene. I think he had waited maybe a couple weeks to take a shower, and he contracted some sort of skin virus. I don't remember what it was called, but it was so bad, it was so itchy, and it drove him insane that he actually had to get off the trail, and took about 30 days of taking some antibiotics to really get rid of it. Now, this might not happen to everyone, but seriously, you will increase your chances of staying healthy if you are showering more often. Me, I showered probably once every 4 or 5 days. Every time that I got in town, I showered. Every time that I had an opportunity, there are like beaches that you go through in the mid-Atlantic states that have free showers. I would take a shower. It was that important to me. And lastly, make sure that you are using sanitizer every time that you get done going to the bathroom and every time before you eat food. Now, attached with this is it's important that you're not touching other hikers. You probably have heard this before, but hikers don't shake each other's hands. We don't do this because of the fear of all of the bacteria that other hikers might have. You know, if they don't have the same hygiene practices that you have, very common that people can contract the norovirus from touching other hikers' hands. So we don't shake, we more of do like the elbow bump or something like that. But it's really important that not only you're using sanitizer, but you aren't sharing food with other hikers or touching hands and things like that. And again, you're just asking to get the norovirus. Tip number 6, don't be left for theft. Now, I'm not referring to the video game here. I'm referring to trying not to stand out. Well, what does that mean for me? That meant, number 1, don't flash your cash. I honestly never remember ever having to carry more than $100 cash on me. I think if you're carrying much more than $100 cash, you are really susceptible to other people knowing that and, again, maybe just targeting you. I didn't really hear about a lot of theft on the trail from hikers to hikers. I did hear about theft from folks on the outside world taking things from hikers, mainly in town, but don't try to stand out. And about the cash thing, there's not very many times where you really need more than $100 cash. Now, the other thing that I want to encourage you is to try to avoid leaving your pack unattended. Now, there are going to be many places that aren't going to allow you to bring your pack inside the store, and you want to respect that, of course. If you can, have someone watch your pack, but for me, any time that I could bring my pack in, I did with me. Now, I can't think of a time where I went to any large grocery store that wouldn't allow me to either wear my pack or throw it either underneath my shopping cart or in my shopping cart with me. For me, it wasn't worth the risk of keeping my pack unattended outside while I did whatever I needed to do and risk the chance of someone taking it and potentially ending my through hike. Now, I've heard this happening to other hikers. Pearisburg was probably the place that I heard this happening most of the time, but it does happen out there, and I just think it's really important that you are watching your belongings. Most of all of the through hikers are all watching out for each other, so it's not going to be too hard to find someone to watch your stuff if they're already outside anyway. But when you can, I would bring your pack in with you. It's just, again, not worth the risk. All right, tip number 7, bear in mind all wildlife. Well, starting off with this one, bears. Bears are going to be everywhere on the trail. You're going to see them. I probably came across maybe 30 or 40 bears on the whole trail. Bears are so much more scared of you than you are of them. You'll find that out when you come face to face with your first few sightings. But there's a few important things on this note. First, anytime that you see any signs up that say anything about shelters being closed or high bear activity, strongly encourage hikers not to stay in this area, you should probably listen to them. Now, this happened to me when I was hiking through Virginia with the German boys. We came to a campsite that had a sign out that strongly encouraged hikers not to stay there. It had high bear activity. We stayed there anyway, mainly because of the time of the day it was. It was really late in the evening and the weather that we were experiencing. But long story short, we had a few visitors that night at our camp, and we came this close of losing all of our food and some gear. So these concerns are really serious, and you should take them really serious. Now, on that note as well, Make sure that you're not leaving food unattended. You never know what's going to happen. If you followed Highlander 58, he had a video out there from a hiker that just went down to fetch some water and left his pack up in an area that had high bear activity, and a bear actually came up in that time, that 5 or 10 minute time window, grabbed his pack and started dragging it off into the woods. I also heard that there was a hiker in the Smokies that got injured, actually had his leg bitten by a bear because of the same reason. So it's really important that you're not just leaving your food unattended. You just never know, especially in the areas that have posted that have high bear activity. And of course, never feed the bears. If any bears out there do get used to human food, what's going to happen? They honestly crave it so much, and they will not stop at any measure until, unfortunately, most of the time they have to put the bear down, and you don't want that on your conscience, so don't do it. So think about the bears. My next tip is ticks. Ticks are a serious concern on the trail. If you haven't already, watch my video about ticks. I just uploaded a few days ago, how to deal with them on the Appalachian Trail. The headline on here is, there are preventable measures that you can use, and I strongly encourage you to do so. Thru-Hikers, section hikers, ridge runners, trail maintainers, all say the same thing about their #1 prevention vehicle, which is using permethrin. This thing works. I will tell you, not only does it deter ticks, but when they land on this stuff, it kills them. But more about ticks, go to my video and I'll talk all about it. And the last thing is snakes. You're probably going to encounter a few snakes on the trail. I encountered 2 rattles and a copperhead. This was really in the middle to the northern part of Virginia. And the headline in here is just be aware. Be aware of anything. If you had your headphones on and you're not paying attention, I'll tell you, there's a good possibility if you come across a rattlesnake and you don't know it, you could be vulnerable to get bitten. Now, if you do see a copperhead or a rattlesnake or something of that nature, many times what hikers will do is write a note, plaster it underneath a rock about 50 yards or so before that snake to warn other thru-hikers. This was great because it just perked up your awareness and you knew that there was probably something up there. So if this happens to you, this is something that works well on the trail. All of us thru-hikers really, really appreciate it. All right, my 8th tip is be a groupie. Now, if you have an opportunity to be able to hike in a group, I would do it. I had the privilege of being able to do this for a couple weeks when I was in Virginia, and it was awesome. Just because you hike in a group doesn't mean that you have to stay with that group every single minute of every single day. As a matter of fact, many hikers that did hike in groups separated themselves during the day. A lot of them wanted the solitude and the peace, and a lot of them didn't have the same hiking styles, or many of them didn't have the same hiking pace. So what they normally did was just kind of agree on a camp that they would all meet at, and then however long it would take all of them to be there, but they would get there, or if they're going into town, they would all meet in town. But being in a group has a lot of benefits. #1, you're able to share responsibilities when you do set up for camp. One person can go down and fetch all water. The next person can hang the bear bags. Another person can get wood out if you're going to have a fire. There's just so many benefits of having a group that you can split up tasks that don't have to be done by every single person, that can be shared. Another great thing about being in a group is when you are going to town and you're resupplying, you probably have a lot more options of things that you can buy because you can split them with other people. Of course, if you agree on eating the same thing. Now, some safety things that you have hiking in a group are great. #1, you are with a group and the chances of something happening to you are a lot less. If you do get hurt or something happens, you have someone there that can take care of you, or maybe they need to go up the trail to get help, whatever it might be, but that is super helpful. Also, there are going to be times where you're going to meet some people out there that you feel uncomfortable. I think the best advice I can give you is listen to your gut, but when you're hiking in a group, that just eliminates scenarios that you could potentially be in that, you know, your safety could be at risk. And then trail registers are the social media of the trail. It's a great way for you to figure out where everyone's at, and in the event that something did happen to somebody, we would be able to actually figure out where they were when it happened if they were signing registers. So it's really important using the trail registers. Not to mention, you're going to find that trail registers are really fun to read because people write really cool things in it, and usually that's the first thing people do when they do get to camp is pull up the register and see, first of all, who's in front of them and all the crazy cool things that are written in the registers. All right, we're almost there. We're at tip #9, which is be wary of weather. Weather is a big X factor on the trail. And it is really important that you know what's happening up in the sky, especially if you are approaching any open ridgelines or balds that put you in a position where you're not going to have any cover above your head. And the last thing you want to do is get caught in a lightning storm or 80-mile-per-hour winds at the top of a bald or a ridgeline. I've heard a lot of horror stories from not just past thru-hikers, but hikers that I hiked with last year, and they weren't pretty. So it's really important that you know the weather. Now, there are some great apps out there that are going to give you this information. One in particular, there's an AT weather app. I'll put it in the details below, that basically tell you what the weather's going to be like at every single shelter on the trail. I use this weather app all the time, every single day that I had service, just so I knew what kind of weather I was coming in contact with. Now, when you get into the White Mountains, every single hut has a weather report, and they're going to give you weather not just of today, but I believe about the next week. But it's really important that you're stopping in the huts just to figure out what the weather's going to be like, because you're going to be going up through open ridge lines very often. So all in all, know what kind of weather that you can expect on the trail so you can take the proper precautions. So wrapping up this, I will tell you, if you have the ability to have some unplanned zeros in the back of your pocket, days that you're going to experience really bad weather are great days to take zeros. All right, tip number 10. Bare your legs, not arms. What I mean by this is, don't bring a gun on the Appalachian Trail. It is totally unnecessary. Can you imagine if every hiker out there was packing heat? I wouldn't feel safe at all. Not only is it a lot of extra weight that you have to carry, but the probability of an accident happening strongly outweighs the possibility of you having to use the gun out on the trail. I will tell you from my experience, most hikers out there get really uncomfortable if they know that there's another hiker out there that has a gun on them, especially if they're staying in the same camp. Now, most hikers that bring a gun on the Appalachian Trail are bringing it because they feel that it's going to make them safe, and they might be in a position where they might have to use it. And I'll tell you, there aren't very many situations that I could ever think of being on the AT where you actually need to use a gun. Most people bring it because of the fear of bears. Like I said earlier, bears are so much more afraid of you than you are of them. So do some research if you don't believe me. Dixie did a great video about guns on the Appalachian Trail, but honestly, they're not necessary. All right, everyone, well, that wraps up my 10 safety tips to help you prevail on the trail. These tips are not just from my own experience, but also from things that I've heard from other hikers that really had caused them to have to get off of the trail. So please learn from them. I hope this was helpful. Give me a thumbs up if it was, and stay tuned for the next sighting. And of course, always follow Bigfoot.